you can't live on one or two streams of income anymore like you used to. You can't be reliant on a boss to for your survival, for you and your family. And everyone should be having that sense of urgency right now, especially given COVID and what's to come.
Welcome to the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, it's Augustino. Investing in notes is just one way many have kicked off their wealth building journey and achieving their financial goals. Well, today's guest understands the intricacies of note investing and has been investing full time in mortgage notes since 2013. Now, prior to this, he has been a successful entrepreneur and real estate investor for over 15 years. Now, to that end, he's been able to leverage all his experience and become a renowned thought leader in the mortgage note investment space. Today, as a managing partner of Bequest funds, he helps investors grow their wealth while helping mortgage borrowers stay in their homes. Now, with all that, I'd like to welcome Martin Saenz to the show. Martin, thanks for coming on, bud.
Thanks for having me, Augustino. Much appreciated.
Yeah,
glad to be here.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. I think so, Martin. All right. Now, if you like what Martin has to say, you can reach him via the contact page at bqfunds.com. And if you like our content, please don't forget to leave a comment and rate the show. It helps us out tremendously when you do. Finally, if you text the word freedom to 202-410-4202, get our free ebook, The Bulletproof Guide to Finding a Broker. Okay, Martin, go ahead and tell the listeners a little bit more about how you got your start in the real estate space.
Sure. So after my wife and I had sold a government contracting company in 2013, I was looking for something new to do. I was still at the point managing a portfolio of properties in the DC area, both commercial and residential properties. However, everything was pretty much on autopilot. So I needed a new venture, if you will. And there I ran across note investing at a local RIA within the DC area. And what I learned really just kind of took me back. I learned that you can buy mortgage notes whereby the borrowers have not made a payment in several years, and you can work with the borrowers to keep them in their homes while making a profit for yourself, via creating a loan modification or getting the borrowers to reinstate. And what really appealed most to me is that I can do this from anywhere in the world, and just needing a laptop and a computer. So with that said, I was kind of taken at that point. I realized that, hey, landlording's great, but I want something a little bit more scalable, and that's what I found in note investing.
Right. Now, I actually know a little bit about this space just from my days of working in the debt collection world, where we actually purchased defaulted credit card assets. So very similar, right? Very similar. So
yes.
Yeah. So one of the biggest components that I understood, at least on the debt collection and asset management side, is getting your hands on those assets and really being able to get your hands on the right assets, because there's a lot of garbage out there, at least as far as credit card debt is concerned, right? I mean, I'm sure you see it, but in your space, how do you know a good note versus a bad note, or is there such a thing?
So, that's an incredibly good question. And, that's one where I've actually written 4 books on the subject of note investing and creating additional streams of income. And I address that question heavily. And really, before anything else, it comes down to how one is positioned in the space, what kind of identity they've created for themselves, what kind of business systems they have set up for themselves, and what kind of community they've built around their business. So it really just starts with those kind of fundamental pillars. But from that point, what is their due diligence process? Because if you're set up correctly and you're ingrained in the right communities, then you're going to see deal flow, right? But like you said, there's a lot of junk out there. But having being a part of the right communities, that will filter out some of the junk in and of itself. But from that point, having good systems in place whereby you're performing due diligence correctly, that's going to be your further filter to make sure that your end result are good notes that you can actually transact on. Yeah. One of the interesting things with note investing, and this is, you'll appreciate this having some debt collection experience on your side, is that many people come into the space and they come with a real estate background. And what they do is they say, well, let me vet this property, right? The collateral for all this is the property. Let me understand, how the roof is. Let me get the exterior BPO. Let me understand how landscaping's done, because how it looks on the outside will determine how, somewhat how it looks on the inside. And let me figure out that property piece. Let me also figure out lien validity, title report, lien position, and all that kind of other, other aspects as it relates to the property. But what I learned is the key to success in the business is not just understand that piece from a due diligence standpoint, but understand the borrower and their ability to pay. So I do a deep dive into the property as well as into the borrower and their ability to pay. Because at the end of the day, the property isn't going to make payments to you. The borrower is going to make payments to you. And that's a very important distinction. So it's very important to do both, because structurally how a mortgage gets underwritten initially is that you walk into the bank and you say, I want to buy a home. And they say, okay. And they put you through all the underwriting rigors, and they create a promissory note, which is a promise to pay between you and the lender, given a certain set of terms. And then they also draft a mortgage document or deed of trust, depending on which state you're in. And that security instrument ties the promise to the property. So it's very critical that you understand, coming into this space and being successful, that you vet both the property and the promise to pay, which is the note and the borrower's ability to pay you. So from that, you will, as long as you're pricing correctly, you will end up with a note business with a portfolio of notes. And then after that comes the asset management piece.
It's interesting because in the debt collection world, well, the guys that buy assets anyway, the smart ones, they will do something similar, right? They assess the credit card, typically it's credit card, their underwriting. So American Express, for instance, has much more stringent underwriting than, say, Visa or MasterCard, bank card, depending which bank it is too, right? And then they look at the demographics of the actual individual that has this card, right? So yeah, very similar thing. But I think it seems to me though, Martin, that in the case of notes, underwriting those two components it sounds to me as a much deeper approach. And I think, not to mention too, the data is far more readily available today anyway, compared to when I used to do it, but on the asset itself specifically, because if that person who the owner of that property ends up bouncing, or they leave or whatever, you still have a decent property in your hands. The property itself is, the data is easily available, right? So that's really the key thing there is, it sounds to me anyway, that if that person does bounce, so what sort of remedies do you have, legal or otherwise, which you don't really want to do, but sometimes you have to put down the hammer on some of those folks, right? But again, the data is readily available, which is super. That stuff is great. Yeah,
it is. So data's there. Analyzing the data and pricing accordingly. That's a whole other phase of the business. What's interesting is that legal is used to go and help the borrower come to the table to do a workout. So our mission for our company is to keep homeowners in their homes with payments they can afford while making a profit for ourselves. So we're looking for that whole win-win situation. We actually foreclose less than 5% of the time.
Wow, nice.
And that's a staggering figure. So you take just this idea, right? Take the concept of buying mortgage note debt whereby the homeowner has not made a payment in 4 or 5 years. And all you hear on the news is they take your home, foreclosures up, this but we actually buy notes specifically. We vet them specifically with the intention of exiting through the borrower, whereby the borrower it comes to the table with a loan modification on a payment plan they can afford, or we receive a full payoff, because payoffs are occurring in our industry, given interest rates and everything else, and property equity spikes and everything else.
Yeah.
So we very seldom exit through the property. And that's a testament to our operation on the asset management side, that we are a team of compassionate individuals. And it's not just lip service. It's the proof is in the pudding. We actually we work out notes almost all the time. Our notes end in a payment plan that the borrower can afford. And the key is, if the borrower cannot afford your payment plan, it's not going to sustain.
Right.
So it's not good business to do that. And the fact that we bought this note at a discount allows us some flexibility to go and work with the borrower to ensure that they can afford the plan.
Right. Now, after you acquire this note, right? So let's say, for instance, and for those of you guys out there that are not very familiar with note buying, so, and maybe Marty can go into a little bit about how you actually get your hands on these notes, like who do you buy them from, and things like that. But also, how do you service them after the fact? So great, you find the asset, or you find I'm assuming a portfolio of these notes from some sort of lender, and you acquire it, and now someone's got to service it. So maybe you can walk through a very high level. How does that work?
So finding the note, right? That's in one of my books, Note Investing Fundamentals. I came up with the tagline is, deal flow is king, not cash flow. But if you can find deal flow on an ongoing basis, and you know what the heck you're doing, you will do very well.
100%.
In my opinion.
Same thing in the asset management world with credit card. Yeah, same thing.
So the question is, how do I find deal flow on an ongoing basis? And the key is that if you are set up as a business, if you are fully immersed in what you're doing, if you have all your systems in place, if you learn the fundamentals whereby you seek mentorship, you seek formal training, and you do all the right steps, you will still take a lot of bumps and bruises. You know that.
Yeah.
However, they'll be minimized, and in the end, you will find your way. You will navigate your way into the communities, into the small, tight-knit communities that have ongoing deal flow. Like we see deals monthly, good deals that very few other people see. And that's because we're positioned well, and deals are finding us now on a regular basis. We're actually not going out and doing sourcing at all. And so I'm not saying we take it for granted. However, for someone on the new side, I think that's really the question, right? You're thinking about note investing on the new side. Start at the retail level. There are online exchanges, PaperStack, loanexchange.com, Notes Direct. These are online exchanges whereby you can go and buy a note or two, and you're going to buy them at a retail level, right? Equivalent to MLS on the real estate side, but at least it can help you get started. So my 2 cents for those that are looking to start is to buy low principal balance mortgages. So don't break the bank. You don't need to go buy $100,000 principal balance mortgage loan. Just go buy a $2,000 one. Yeah, the rewards are not going to be as great, but your risk is well minimized. So start small while you build your mechanics and while you grow your identity and start forming your community, and you'll have everything in place over time.
Nice. So now, what is typical cost on the dollar for, I guess, something for a decent asset? I know that it all varies depending on the asset, the tenant, or rather the owner, where everything is located, where the property is located, all that varies. And in the world of credit card assets, it would range, at least back in the day, anywhere between 8 to 14 cents on the dollar, depending on the quality of the asset. So in your world, typically what is a mortgage note going for these days?
So I'm going to give you a range, and it's not going to satisfy your question there, but we're buying assets at 2 cents all the way up to 60 cents on the dollar.
Wow.
So it's a full range, because we're buying, when you buy in larger pools, you have more diversification, right? So you have pricing matrices, and it depends on where that note plugs in after you do your due diligence as to what you're going to offer.
Yeah.
So, but on average, you might pay for 35 cents on the dollar for a junior lien mortgage note. That's a lien in second position or above. And you might pay 50, 60 cents on the dollar for a first lien position that's in first lien position.
Yeah. And the thing is, though, is that the lower the cost per dollar, the higher the risk it is. If it's similar to the whole credit card thing, right? It's typically whenever we go buy something for 2 cents on the dollar, it's usually garbage. It's already been through several places. Maybe they've already tried to do other remedies through. I'm assuming the same sort of thing, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, you have notes that have been, owned by 5 investors previously and have been beat up, and you have virgin paper that comes straight from hedge funds that hasn't been touched.
Yeah.
And so, different levels of play. Equity coverage is very significant. FMV, we generally actually prefer junior liens over senior liens because very few senior liens with property values of over 125K hit the market, because financial institutions usually keep those because they see themselves getting their money back. So on the senior lien side, you see a lot of senior liens out in the market where the FMV fair market value is under 125K. So there's an inherent risk when you get the FMVs, low enough, 80K and below, because Augustine, you understand an 80K property can turn to be a 25K property in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye. But on the junior lien side, our FMVs on the low end are about 150 and all the way up to $3 million.
Huh. It's very reminiscent in the world of credit card. We used to target $1,500 balances for certain states because we knew that for $1,500, there's just enough to go legal, right? And to apply legal remedy on it, right? It's like we were planning on it just in case, maybe 1/3 of the portfolio we're gonna put legal in, so we'd budget accordingly, right? So so they have similar rules, right? Obviously, it's 2 different types of assets, but it's kind of like you have your sweet spot. That sounds like the sweet spot right there, right? Of a second position. I mean, me personally, I think I would probably go for a primary position, but then again, I'm not a note investor, so I don't know anything about it, but I guess it sounds to me like it depends on the asset size too, right?
So there's a rule of thumb that for senior lien buyers, you're taking back the property more often than not. So there's a 7 out of 10, so 70% chance you're going to get the property back when you're buying senior liens. So that's when you have properties where let's say the FMV's at 70 to 80K. A lot of times those people will just leave, move back in with family, or, go rent out another house down the street, something like that. And so, but when you have a 400K home where there's HOA and the kids are, established in the neighborhood, they're going to work out terms more often than not. So it really, you have to be set up from a property management standpoint to if you're going to be taking back properties. You need a network of realtors, you need a network of you need systems in place by which to turn over those properties. And some people note invest with the intention of exiting through the property, and they create turnkey rentals and seller financing, and they do all those kinds of things, which it's not my angle, but it's an approach.
Right. So now, does that mean then, it sounds to me like you have to have all your operational processes in the background set up. So do you have like your own call center then? You're making the phone calls, your team is making the phone calls, or are they scattered throughout the US? Like how's all that set up?
We have in-house asset managers. So we have what we call a cradle to grave approach. And what that means is that when we buy notes whereby they're non-performing, our asset managers work with them in a very compassionate way to get them to perform, and they not only leave that relationship from that point of creating a loan modification, but asset manager actually stays with that borrower through the course of time. And then those notes eventually, when they're seasoned to meet other metrics, they move into our income fund, whereby we have investors that come into our income fund and share on our profits. And so, but however, if that borrower ever needs us or has an issue, they can call in and talk to the same person that created the loan modification. So it's a cradle to grave approach. And Bequest Funds is kind of a play on legacy. So it's not just a legacy because it's an evergreen fund for investors, but it's also a legacy play where we're gonna stick with the borrower over the course of time, as opposed to maybe other lending institutions that, you're calling in and talking to a new person every time you call it.
Right. So that's interesting. So for someone that wants to get into this business, though, I mean, it sounds to me like it isn't just going to one of those websites you'd mentioned, buying a bunch of, these accounts and start hitting the phones. I mean, it sounds to me, you really have to have your servicing side set up. You have to have your network of brokers in case you do have to take the property back, or you end up, buying one of those primary position notes. So you got to have that into play. You got to understand how to underwrite. Whether if you're going to do it, if you're going to have someone else do it for you, you have to be able to underwrite not only the asset but also the actual person living there as well. So it's going to require you to have access to certain types of other data sources. So I mean, there's a lot to this, it seems, right?
There's a lot of intricacies. I think of when you're speaking, I think of Bill Bartman's book Bailout Riches, because he's a billionaire. He passed away a few years ago, but he created a $1 billion organization around just what you're talking about, buying unsecured debt and just kind of parlaying it into a $1 billion operation. And there's so much complexity to this that we see just high turnover of individuals that come into the space and exit the same year, and it's probably the same thing on real estate investing side too. I would imagine, once people find out it's work and it's, and you have to establish a business and it's not a hobby, right? Hobbyists kind of leave, those individuals kind of get burnt out. Yeah. It's the ones that are kind of really committed day in, day out. And it doesn't mean you don't have to have a full-time job, but you have to do what you have to do, but you just need full-time effort. And it's that's how it is in note investing. And that's why I wrote my first book, Note Investing Made Easier. And because I learned this and I did extremely well with it, 5-6 years ago. And then I wanted to share, some of what I was doing with other people. And it's kind of grown into other ways that I've gotten exposure out in the note space. It's a shadow industry. I think you can kind of appreciate that. Like, people don't really talk about note investing. It's kind of been like the uncle that's left in the closet.
Well, I think part of it is that the general feel for at least the credit card side anyway is that they're vultures, they're bad people, they're terrible, that kind of thing, right? I mean, from that perspective, it's not an easy job. Number one, you're absolutely right. You have to be 100% committed to doing it, because it requires, like I said, a lot of effort to make it happen. But what that person is doing is they're contributing back to the economy. Otherwise, if they were unable to liquidate those types of defaulted assets, you wouldn't be able to get a credit card right now. No one can, right? Because the credit card companies have to sell this asset to someone so they can recoup some of those lost costs, right? Same thing goes with notes, right? I mean, the reason why we enjoyed low interest rates is because there's a secondary market for these assets to go to, right? So, but it sounds like in your case, though, do you think that stigma is still there as a notes investor, that you're somehow Martin the bad guy because you're slinging notes, that kind of thing? Or what are your thoughts around that?
So I think that well, first of all, in my own, the dynamic of our company, we're very much customer focused and compassionate and genuine and very transparent with borrowers. So when borrowers meet us, they walk away at the end saying, no one's ever treated me like this. No one's ever treated me like a person. So we're working like one borrower at a time to alleviate that stereotype. However, that stereotype very much exists for a reason in the industry. It's because a lot of banks and large hedge funds have have made this a transactional business over the course of time. And what that means is that the banks pull together the distressed paper and sell it off in tranches and 10 cents on the dollar. The hedge funds flip that paper and sell it for 20 cents on the dollar. So all these organizations are just flipping this paper. And what's happened is that there's a per diem interest clock that ticks, right? Every day the borrower doesn't make a payment, interest is accrued on their account. So that right there, I think, is a travesty in our industry, in that no one's there educating the borrowers. No one's there letting them know, hey, Miss Jones, every day you don't make a payment on your account, did you know that $5.11 gets added to your balance? And if you're on a junior lien side, you may be paying down your first mortgage, but you're creating equity for the junior lien as you're doing that. So no one's ever having this kind of honest conversation. And so we look at ourselves as really just kind of helping the borrower in every way possible. And yes, we're making money. We're a business. I'm going to let you know that. However, we have purchased these loans at a discount, so we can we can extend that courtesy over to the borrowers.
Nice. So, are you able to then? You're raising money to buy these assets, I'm guessing, right?
I'm sorry?
You're raising money to buy these assets, and like how are you going out and purchasing these assets?
So we have a debt partner for our non-performing side. So we have really deep resources to go out and buy these. Now as for when they become performing and they move into Bequest funds, we're raising capital into our income fund with accredited investors. It's a 506c fund. And so from that point, that allows us to buy notes from our non-performing entity and recapitalize on that side and pay back our debt partners that way.
Nice.
So that's how the kind of flow works.
Excellent. So you have these books then. So I'm assuming that for those people that are interested in learning more about how to get into note investing, they should just start picking up some of your books and getting in that way.
Yeah, you can just go to Amazon and type in note investing, and I'm on the first page. Note investing made easier, real estate note investing mentorship, note investing fundamentals, and I just released Cashflow Dojo, build your home on multiple streams of income. So that one I'm kind of that one's just kind of like imparting a sense of urgency to individuals that you can't live on one or two streams of income anymore like you used to. You can't be reliant on a boss for your survival, for you and your family. And everyone should be having that sense of urgency right now, especially given COVID and what's to come.
Oh my God, 100%, man. I mean, I totally agree with that. Everyone listening ought to be trying to find those multiple streams of income, and different little drips here and there. You got to have them. And this is certainly one way to do it. But it sounds to me like doing note investing really requires some level of commitment and really have to build up the business. So it's going to take a little bit of effort.
Oh yeah.
Maybe more than a little bit of effort.
But like anything, if it's worth doing, it's going to be hard work. Yeah. Things that seem easy, they're easy for a reason. It's not going to get you where you need to be.
That's right. Okay, Martin. So if you had that one piece of bulletproof advice for someone listening, what would you tell them?
I live my life by this code here, and that is only buy assets that you can control and that cash flow. Yeah,
I love it. I think even John D. Rockefeller said, own nothing, control everything, right? So, yeah, there we go. Excellent. Beautiful. All right, guys. Well, if you want to reach out to Martin, you can reach him via his website at bqfunds.com. Go ahead and go to Amazon and check out his stuff on note investing as well. I think that if you're interested in getting into the note field, definitely check out his material. He's got some really good stuff. Hope you got some good insight on note investing and what you need to know to build wealth and cash flow in this very unique business model. I still think there's a lot of opportunity in there in that business realm, currently there's a big rush towards real estate. This could be another way to do it. So definitely check it out. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast.